Rose Martinez thought she was just interviewing for a marketing job. She never imagined she'd become the center of a deadly game between a trapped billionaire CEO and his vengeful fiancée. Greetings, fellow dreamers. This tale is filled with love, secrets, and a twist you'll never forget. Step into the tale. The rain hammered against the floor-to-ceiling windows of Blackstone Industries as Rose Martinez clutched her portfolio, her heels echoing through the marble lobby. The medical bills for her mother's cancer treatment had drained their savings, and her brother's college tuition loomed like an impossible mountain. This job was her lifeline. 42nd floor, the receptionist said without looking up. Mr. Blackstone doesn't like to be kept waiting. The elevator whispered her up into a world of glass and steel that cost more than her family would see in a lifetime. Through the conference room windows, Central Park stretched below like a green sanctuary in the concrete jungle. Raised voices cut through the silence from the adjacent office. Rose tried not to listen, but the conversation was impossible to ignore. I don't care what father thinks is best for the company. The voice carried raw frustration. I'm not marrying Cordelia Ashworth just to merge our business interests. This isn't the 18th century. Rose buried her nose in her notes, heat creeping up her neck. This had to be Damian Blackstone himself, and he sounded nothing like the composed businessman from the magazines. I won't spend my life with someone I don't love just because it looks good in the society pages, he continued. His tone strained. There has to be another way. The door opened and Damian Blackstone walked in. He was devastating. Dark hair that looked like he'd been running his fingers through it, steel gray eyes that seemed to see everything at once, and a jawline that belonged in magazines. His perfectly tailored suit couldn't hide the tension radiating from his shoulders. Miss Martinez. His voice was rich and warm, completely different from the frustrated tone she'd overheard. I apologize for keeping you waiting, not at all, Mr. Blackstone. Rose shook his hand, trying not to notice how his touch sent an unexpected spark up her arm. Thank you for meeting with me personally. As they discussed her marketing vision, Rose felt herself relaxing. Damian was engaged, asking thoughtful questions that showed he genuinely cared about the company's impact. There was an intensity about him that was magnetic, but also something guarded. What drew you to marketing? Rose asked. Most tech CEOs focus on operations. His expression shifted, becoming more thoughtful. The best technology in the world is useless if people don't understand how it can improve their lives. Marketing isn't about manipulation. It's about connection. That's exactly how I see it, Rose said, leaning forward. Technology should serve humanity, not the other way around. For a moment, their eyes met across the table, and Rose felt something shift in the air between them. Recognition, understanding. That went beyond professional compatibility. Then his phone buzzed. Damian glanced at the screen, and his expression darkened. I'm sorry. I need to take this, he answered with a curt, Yes, father. Rose watched his entire demeanor change. The passionate man she'd been talking to disappeared, replaced by someone cold and distant. She could see the tension building in his shoulders as he spoke in clipped, formal responses. The engagement party is next week. Yes, I understand the importance of maintaining appearances. When he hung up, the silence was heavy. Rose could see him struggling to regain his professional composure, and she felt an unexpected urge to comfort this powerful man who looked completely trapped. Mr. Blackstone, she said gently, are you all right? He looked up, surprised by the question. For a moment, his carefully constructed mask slipped, and she saw something raw and vulnerable in his eyes. I'm fine, he said automatically, then caught himself. Actually, no, I'm not fine. But that's not your concern. Sometimes it helps to talk to someone outside the situation, Rose offered. I'm a good listener. Damian studied her for a long moment, as if deciding whether he could trust her. Finally, he spoke. My father has arranged for me to marry someone. A business merger, disguised as a romance. Everyone expects me to go through with it because it makes financial sense. Rose felt her heart sink. But you don't love her? I don't even know her, Damian replied. We're both just playing roles that other people have written for us. Before Rose could respond, the conference room door burst open. A woman in an elegant cream dress swept in, followed by an older man who could only be Theodore Blackstone. "Darling," the woman said, moving toward Damian with practiced grace. "I hope I'm not interrupting anything important." This had to be Cordelia Ashworth. Stunningly beautiful in a polished, classical way. With blonde hair perfectly styled and the kind of poise that came from a lifetime of finishing schools, she looked exactly like the kind of woman who would marry a billionaire. "This is Rose Martinez," Damian said, standing. "Rose, this is Cordelia Ashworth. My fiancée." The word hit Rose like a physical blow. Cordelia extended a perfectly manicured hand, her fingers cold as ice. "How lovely to meet you," Cordelia said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I hope Damian hasn't been boring you with too much talk about business." Theodore Blackstone stepped forward, his presence commanding immediate attention. He was an older version of Damian, but where his son had warmth beneath his professional exterior, Theodore seemed carved from ice. "Miss Martinez," he said, his voice carrying absolute authority. "I trust the interview went well. We're always looking for dedicated team members who understand the importance of discretion." The emphasis on discretion was clear. Whatever she had overheard was to remain confidential. "Of course, Mr. Blackstone," Rose replied. "I understand completely." "Excellent." Theodore turned to his son. "Damian, we need to discuss the arrangements for next week's party." As they spoke, Rose caught Damian's eye across the room. In that single glance, she saw desperation, longing, and something that made her breath catch in her throat. He was trapped in a gilded cage, and somehow she was the only one who could see it. 3 days later, Rose sat in her cramped studio apartment, staring at the job offer email that could change everything. The salary was more than she'd ever dreamed of, enough to cover her mother's treatments and her brother's education. But accepting meant working inches away from a man who made her pulse race with just a glance. Her phone rang. "Unknown number, Miss Martinez." "This is Damian Blackstone." Her heart stuttered. "Mr. Blackstone, I was just reviewing your offer. I'm calling about something else entirely." His voice was strained. "I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me." Rose gripped the phone tighter. "Of course. Would you be willing to help me with something that could be considered morally questionable?" The question hung in the air like smoke. What kind of help? The kind that could hurt someone innocent. The kind that could destroy everything I've built. His voice dropped to almost a whisper. "But it might be the only way to save both of us." Rose's mouth went dry. "I don't understand. My father is dying, Rose. Cancer. He has maybe 6 months left, and he's determined to see me married before he goes. If I refuse this engagement, he'll cut me out of the company entirely. 20,000 employees will lose their jobs when the board tears everything apart." The weight of his words settled over her like lead. "What are you asking me to do?" "I need you to be my secretary, my personal assistant, and I need Cordelia to believe that there's nothing between us while I figure out how to break free from this arrangement without destroying everyone's lives in the SC process." "You want me to lie?" "I want you to help me save the company while I find another way. But Rose, if you do this, you'll be putting yourself at risk. Cordelia isn't just beautiful and wealthy. She's ruthless. And if she suspects that you mean something to me, she'll destroy you without hesitation." Rose closed her eyes, thinking of her mother's pale face in the hospital bed, her brother's acceptance letter to MIT that they couldn't afford. "And if I refuse, then I'll understand completely. I'll give the job to someone else, and you'll never have to see me again." The silence stretched between them, filled with unspoken possibilities and dangerous promises. "There's something else," Damian continued. "Something I haven't told you about Cordelia. About why this marriage is so important to both our families." "What?" "She's not just marrying me for love, or even for money. She's marrying me for revenge." Rose felt ice creep down her spine. "What do you mean?" 5 years ago, my father's company destroyed her family's business. Her father lost everything and died of a heart attack 6 months later. Cordelia has spent the last 5 years positioning herself to get close to our family. This engagement isn't about merging companies. It's about her getting close enough to tear everything down from the inside. You know this, and you're still going through with it? I found out 3 days ago. The same day I interviewed you. His voice was rough with exhaustion. My private investigator confirmed it yesterday. She's already started moving pieces into place. Financial irregularities that could trigger a federal investigation, strategic leaks to competitors. She's playing a long game, and I'm running out of time. Rose pressed her hand to her forehead. Why are you telling me this? Because I think you might be the only person who can help me stop her without destroying my father's legacy. But Rose, if you say yes to this, you're not just agreeing to be my assistant. You're agreeing to help me deceive everyone around us while I try to outmaneuver someone who spent 5 years planning her revenge. The weight of the decision crushed down on her. Her family's future balanced against getting involved in a dangerous game of corporate espionage and family vendettas. I need to think about this. You have until tomorrow morning. The engagement party is this weekend, and I need to know if you're with me or not. After he hung up, Rose sat in the darkness of her apartment, staring out at the city lights. She thought about her mother's medical bills, her brother's dreams, and the way Damian's eyes had looked so desperately trapped. The next morning, she called him back. I'll do it, she said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. But I have conditions. Name them. First, you tell me everything. No more secrets. No more lies between us. If I'm going to help you, I need to know exactly what I'm walking into. Agreed. Second, if this goes wrong, if Cordelia figures out what we're doing, you protect my family. Whatever happens to me, they stay safe. Rose, nothing will happen to you. I swear it. You can't promise that, and we both know it. Do I have your word about my family? A long pause. You have my word, then I'm in. 2 days later, Rose walked into Blackstone Industries as Damian's new personal assistant. Cordelia was waiting in his office, her smile sharp as a blade. Rose, darling, she said, her voice dripping honey. How wonderful that Damian has found someone so dedicated to help him during this busy time. I'm sure you'll be spending many long hours together. The way she said it made Rose's skin crawl. Cordelia knew exactly what kind of game they were playing, and she was already 3 moves ahead. I'm looking forward to supporting Mr. Blackstone in any way I can, Rose replied carefully. Cordelia's smile widened. I'm certain you are. As Cordelia left, Rose caught her reflection in the office window. She looked the same as always, but inside, she felt fundamentally changed. She'd just agreed to help a man she barely knew deceive his fiancée while playing a game that could destroy them all. But when Damian looked at her with those desperate gray eyes, she knew she'd made the only choice she could live with. The Blackstone mansion blazed with golden light against the October darkness, every window glowing like a beacon for Manhattan's elite. Rose stood at the service entrance, adjusting her simple black dress, feeling completely out of place among the army of caterers and event staff. You don't belong back here. Rose turned to find Cordelia approaching, stunning in emerald silk that probably cost more than Rose's entire wardrobe. Her smile was predatory. I was just checking with the catering manager about the evening's schedule, Rose lied smoothly. Mr. Blackstone wanted me to ensure everything runs perfectly for your special night. How thoughtful of him. Cordelia stepped closer, her perfume cloying and overwhelming. Tell me, Rose, what exactly do you think of my fiancé? The question was a trap, and they both knew it. Rose chose her words carefully. Mr. Blackstone is a dedicated businessman who cares deeply about his company and employees. That's not what I asked. Cordelia's green eyes glittered dangerously. I asked what you think of him. As a man? Rose's pulse quickened, but she kept her voice steady. I think he's lucky to have found someone who shares his commitment to the family business. Cordelia laughed. Sound like breaking crystal. Clever girl. But we both know there's more to it than that, don't we? Before Rose could respond, Damian appeared in the doorway. He was breathtaking in his black tuxedo, but Rose could see the tension in his shoulders, the careful way he held himself. Cordelia, our guests are arriving, he said, extending his arm to her. His eyes found Rose's for just a moment, and she saw the apology there. Of course, darling. Cordelia slipped her arm through his, marking her territory. Rose was just telling me how dedicated she is to supporting you in all your endeavors. The double meaning wasn't lost on any of them. Rose spent the next 2 hours moving through the shadows of the party, watching Damian and Cordelia play their parts perfectly. They looked like the ideal couple. Beautiful, powerful, completely in sync. Every touch, every shared glance, every laugh seemed genuine to the hundreds of guests celebrating their engagement. But Rose knew better. She could see the way Damian's smile never quite reached his eyes. The careful distance he maintained even while appearing intimate, and she noticed things others missed. The way Cordelia's fingers dug into his arm just a little too hard when photographers approached. The whispered conversations she had with certain guests that made their faces go pale. The manila envelope she passed to a man Rose recognized as a federal prosecutor. Around midnight, as the party began to wind down, Rose found herself alone on the mansion's back terrace, needing air. The city stretched out below, a maze of lights and shadows. "You shouldn't be out here alone." Damian's voice made her turn. He stood in the doorway, his bow tie undone, looking exhausted. "I needed a moment to breathe," she said. "It's quite a party." He joined her at the railing, careful to maintain distance between them. Cordelia outdid herself with the planning. She has a gift for creating the perfect facade. Is that what tonight was? A facade? Damian was quiet for a long moment. "Everything about my life is a facade these days, except when I'm talking to you." The honesty in his voice made her chest tighten. "Damian, we can't do this." "Not here. Not now." "I know." He turned to face her fully. "But Rose, I need you to know something. Whatever happens in the coming weeks, whatever you see or hear, I need you to remember that not everything is what it appears to be." Before she could ask what he meant, footsteps echoed from inside. They quickly moved apart as Theodore Blackstone appeared, his face grim. "Damian, we need to talk. Now." Rose started to leave, but Theodore held up a hand. "Stay, Miss Martinez. This concerns you too." Damian's father looked older than his 70 years. The weight of his illness and his family's legacy carved into every line of his face. "I've just learned something that changes everything," he said, his voice carrying the authority of a man accustomed to being obeyed. "Someone has been feeding information to our competitors. Financial projections, development timelines, strategic plans. We have a spy inside the company." Rose felt the blood drain from her face. Beside her, Damian went very still. "Who?" Damian asked, though Rose could hear that he already suspected. "We're not certain yet, but the leak started 3 weeks ago. Right around the time you hired your new assistant, the accusation hung in the air like poison." Rose's mouth went dry as she realized what Theodore was implying. "Dad, that's impossible," Damian said, his voice tight with controlled fury. "Rose would never, wouldn't she?" Theodore's gray eyes, so much like his son's, bored into Rose, a young woman with mounting family debts, suddenly given access to highly sensitive information. "It wouldn't be the first time someone's been bought." "You're wrong," Rose said, finding her voice despite the terror clawing at her throat. "I would never betray Mr. Blackstone or this company." "Then you won't mind if we search your apartment," Theodore said. Tonight, Rose's blood turned to ice. In her apartment, hidden in her laptop bag, was a flash drive containing copies of every document Damian had asked her to review as his assistant. He'd given it to her yesterday, telling her it contained backup files in case something happened to his office computer. She'd been set up. The realization hit her like a physical blow. Damian had played her perfectly, gaining her trust, making her believe they were on the same side. And now, she was about to be framed as a corporate spy. "Of course," she said, her voice steady despite her shaking hands. "Search whatever you need to search." Damian still hadn't spoken. Rose looked at him, searching his face for some sign that this was part of a larger plan, that he hadn't betrayed her. But his gray eyes were cold as winter steel, and she saw the truth. She'd been played by a master. The search of Rose's apartment lasted for hours. Federal agents tore through her belongings while she sat on her threadbare couch, watching her life unraveled thread by thread. They found the flash drive exactly where she'd left it, buried in her laptop bag like a ticking bomb. "Miss Martinez," Agent Chen said, holding up the drive. This contains highly classified Blackstone Industries financial data. How do you explain its presence in your possession? Rose looked at Damian, who stood by her kitchen window like a statue carved from ice. He hadn't spoken to her since they'd arrived, hadn't met her eyes, hadn't shown even a flicker of the man who'd asked for her help just days ago. "I don't know how it got there," she said quietly. The lie tasted bitter on her tongue. Agent Chen exchanged glances with his partner. "Miss Martinez, we have evidence linking you to several unauthorized data transfers over the past 3 weeks. The FBI's Financial Crimes Division has been investigating corporate espionage at Blackstone Industries, and this drive contains information that was sold to 3 different competitor companies." The room spun. Rose gripped the couch cushion, her knuckles white. "That's impossible. I never sold anything to anyone. The transfers were made using your employee access codes." Agent Chen continued relentlessly. 2 offshore accounts that trace back to shell companies registered under your social security number?" Rose's breath caught. She'd been framed completely, professionally, by someone who knew exactly how to destroy her life. "I want a lawyer," she whispered. "That's your right," Agent Chen said, producing handcuffs. "Rose Martinez, you're under arrest for corporate espionage, wire fraud, and violation of the Economic Espionage Act." As the cold metal closed around her wrists, Rose finally looked at Damian. For just a moment, his mask slipped, and she saw something that might have been regret in his eyes. "Why?" she asked, her voice breaking. He turned away without answering. 3 days later, Rose sat in a federal holding facility, still wearing the simple black dress from the engagement party. Her mother's cancer treatment had been suspended when her insurance was canceled. Her brother had withdrawn from MIT when the family's assets were frozen pending investigation. Everything she'd tried to protect had been destroyed anyway. The door opened, and Damian walked in. He looked haggard, his perfect composure finally cracked. "5 minutes," the guard said, locking them in together. Rose didn't look up from her hands. "Come to gloat." "Rose, please. Look at me." She raised her head slowly. "What do you want, Damian? Haven't you done enough?" He sat across from her, his hands shaking slightly. "I need you to know that I never wanted this to happen to you, but you let it happen." "Anyway, I had no choice." Rose laughed bitterly. "There's always a choice. You just chose your family's billions over my life." "My father is dying," Damian said desperately. "The company employs 20,000 people. Cordelia was going to destroy everything if I didn't give her someone to blame for the corporate espionage." The truth hit Rose like a sledgehammer. "Cordelia. She's the real spy." Damian nodded miserably. "She's been planning this for 5 years. Every document that was stolen, every secret that was sold, it was all her. But she made sure the digital trail led back to you, and you let her do it. I tried to find another way. I swear to you, Rose, I tried everything. But she had evidence that could send my father to prison for financial crimes he committed 20 years ago. She would have used it if I didn't cooperate." Rose stared at him, seeing him clearly for the first time. "So you sacrificed me to save him?" "The FBI will figure out the truth eventually," Damian said weakly. "Your lawyer is good. You'll be cleared, eventually." Rose's voice was hollow. "After my mother dies without treatment, after my brother's future is destroyed, after I spend years in prison for crimes I didn't commit," Damian flinched as if she'd slapped him. "Rose, I'll make this right. I swear to you." "How?" she asked. "How do you make this right?" He leaned forward, his eyes burning with desperate intensity. "Help me destroy her." Rose went very still. "What?" "Cordelia thinks she's won. She thinks you're neutralized, and I'm completely under her control. But she doesn't know that I've been documenting everything. Every conversation, every transaction, every piece of evidence of her real plan. You want me to help you?" Rose's voice was flat with disbelief. "After you've betrayed me? After you let me be arrested for her crimes? You want me to help you?" "I know how it sounds," Damian said quickly. "But Rose, she's planning something bigger. The corporate espionage was just the beginning. She's going to wait until after we're married, till she has legal access to everything, and then she's going to destroy the company entirely. 20,000 jobs, gone. My father's life's work destroyed. Rose studied his face. And what happens to me in your grand plan for justice? You'll be exonerated completely. I have enough evidence to prove your innocence and Cordelia's guilt. But I need your help to get the final piece, which is... Damian pulled out a small device that looked like a pen. She's meeting with her handler tomorrow night. The person who's been helping her orchestrate this whole scheme. If we can record that conversation, we'll have everything we need to bring her down. Rose looked at the recording device, then back at Damian's face. You're asking me to risk my life? If she finds out I'm working with you, she'll kill me. We both know that. I'll protect you, Damian said. I swear on my father's life, I'll protect you. Your father's life. Rose's smile was sharp as broken glass. The same life you protected by throwing me away? Damian's face crumpled. Rose, please. I know I don't deserve your help. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. But those 20,000 employees deserve a chance. Your brother deserves his future back. Your mother deserves her treatment. Rose was quiet for a long moment, weighing her options. She could refuse, serve her time, and hope that justice eventually prevailed. Or she could take one last desperate gamble with the man who'd already betrayed her once. If I do this, she said slowly, and we somehow survive it, I never want to see you again. No matter how this ends, you and I are finished. Forever. Damian's eyes filled with something that looked like grief. I understand, then tell me the plan. The abandoned warehouse in Queens smelled of rust and forgotten dreams. Rose crouched behind a shipping container, the recording device trembling in her hand as footsteps echoed through the darkness. Damian had positioned himself on the opposite side of the building, ready to call the FBI the moment they had what they needed. Cordelia's voice cut through the shadows like a blade. You're late, Marcus. Traffic, came the reply. Rose recognized the voice. Marcus Webb, Theodore Blackstone's most trusted board member. The man who'd been feeding Cordelia inside information for 5 years. Do we have a problem? Cordelia asked. The Martinez girl is asking too many questions from her cell. Her lawyer is getting suspicious about the evidence trail. Rose pressed closer to the container, her heart hammering against her ribs. It doesn't matter, Cordelia said coldly. Once Damian and I are married next month, I'll have access to all the family assets. We can tie up the loose ends permanently. You mean kill her? I mean solve our problems efficiently? Rose Martinez is a liability we can't afford. Rose's blood turned to ice. She activated the recording device, praying it was sensitive enough to pick up their conversation from this distance. What about Theodore? Marcus asked. The old man isn't as weak as you thought. He's been asking questions about the timing of the leaks. Cordelia laughed, a sound like breaking glass. Theodore won't be a problem much longer. The medication I've been slipping into, his evening whiskey, is accelerating his cancer beautifully. He has maybe 2 weeks left. Rose bit back a gasp. Cordelia wasn't just stealing from the Blackstones. She was murdering Theodore. You're poisoning him. Marcus sounded shaken. I'm helping nature take its course. Once he's dead and I'm married to Damian, we'll have complete control of the company. Then we can dismantle it piece by piece, sell everything to our buyers overseas, disappear with enough money to buy our own small country. Rose had heard enough. She carefully backed away from the container, ready to signal Damian, but her foot caught a piece of loose metal, sending it clattering across the concrete floor. The warehouse went dead silent. What was that? Marcus hissed. Rose held her breath, pressing herself against the cold metal of the container. Heavy footsteps approached her hiding spot. Come out, wherever you are, Cordelia sang softly. Rose ran. She sprinted through the maze of shipping containers, her heels echoing off the concrete like gunshots. Behind her, she could hear Cordelia and Marcus giving chase, their footsteps gaining ground. Rose. Damian's voice cut through the darkness. This way. She followed the sound, bursting out of the container maze to find Damian standing by a side exit. His face was pale with terror. Did you get it? He asked urgently. Yes, but they know I'm here, Rose gasped. She's been poisoning your father. This whole thing, It's bigger than we thought. Damian's face went white. We need to go now. They burst through the exit into the cold October night, but Marcus was waiting for them. He held a gun with steady hands, his face grim. "I'm sorry, Damian," he said quietly. "But you've seen too much." "Marcus, you don't have to do this," Damian said, stepping protectively in front of Rose. "We can work something out." "No," Marcus replied. "We really can't." The gunshot was impossibly loud in the night air. Rose screamed as Damian staggered backward, blood spreading across his white shirt. He pressed the wound with one hand, using the other to push Rose toward a waiting car. "Go," he gasped. "Take the recording to the FBI. Save my father." "I'm not leaving you," Rose said desperately, trying to support his weight. "You have to." Damian's gray eyes locked with hers, full of pain and regret, and something that looked like love. "This is the only way to make it right." More footsteps echoed from the warehouse. Cordelia and additional men emerged, weapons drawn. "Rose, go," Damian said again, more urgently. "Please," she looked at him. This broken man who'd betrayed her and destroyed her life and somehow still managed to be the only person she'd ever loved. Then she looked at the recording device in her hand, containing the evidence that could save Theodore Blackstone and 20,000 innocent jobs. "I forgive you," she whispered. Then she ran. The next morning, FBI agents arrested Cordelia Ashworth and Marcus Webb. The recording was clear enough to convict them both of conspiracy, corporate espionage, and attempted murder. Theodore Blackstone was rushed to the hospital, where doctors worked frantically to counteract the poison that had been slowly killing him. Rose's charges were dropped. Her family's assets were unfrozen. Her mother's treatment resumed, but Damian Blackstone died in the ambulance on the way to the hospital, his last words reportedly being Rose's name. 6 months later, Rose stood in the cemetery where they'd buried him. The headstone was simple black granite, inscribed with just his name and dates. No elaborate epitaph, no mention of his business empire or family legacy. Theodore had survived, though the poison had taken its toll. He'd offered Rose any job she wanted at Blackstone Industries, along with a settlement that would set her family up for life. She'd taken the money but declined the job. Some wounds were too deep for corporate healing. "I kept my promise," she said quietly to the headstone. "Your father's alive. The company's safe. Everyone you tried to protect is okay." The wind rustled through the autumn leaves, carrying the scent of approaching winter. "I wish you could have found another way," she continued. "I wish you could have trusted me from the beginning. I wish a lot of things." She placed a single white rose on the grave, then turned to walk away. Behind her, carved into the granite below his name, were words she hadn't noticed before. Fresh letters recently added. "For Rose, who deserved better than my sacrifice." She closed her eyes, feeling tears she thought had dried up months ago. When she opened them again, Theodore Blackstone stood at the cemetery gate, leaning heavily on a walking cane. The poison had aged him decades and months, but his eyes still held the same steel as his son's. "He loved you," Theodore said simply as she approached. "In the end, that's what saved us all." Rose stopped beside him, both of them looking back at the grave. "He destroyed me first." "Yes," Theodore agreed. "He did. But he also gave everything to put you back together." They stood in silence for a moment. Two people bound together by loss and the complicated legacy of a manhood, tried to save everyone, and nearly lost everything in the process. "The board met yesterday," Theodore said finally. "We've established the Rose Martinez Foundation. Full scholarships for underprivileged students, medical assistance for families in crisis." Damian left specific instructions in his will. Rose felt something crack inside her chest. Even in death, he was still trying to make amends. "He also left you something else," Theodore continued, pulling an envelope from his coat pocket. "His personal lawyer was instructed to give you this 6 months after his death." Rose took the envelope with shaking hands. Her name was written across the front in Damian's precise handwriting. "I'll leave you to read it privately," Theodore said, turning to go. He paused, looking back. "For what it's worth, Miss Martinez, I believe my son loved you more than he feared losing everything else. That's why he was willing to lose it all." After he left, Rose sat on a nearby bench and opened the envelope. Inside was a single sheet of paper and a small silver key. Rose, if you're reading this, then my plan worked and I'm dead. I know that sounds clinical, but I need you to understand that dying was always part of my strategy. It was the only way to ensure Cordelia couldn't hurt you or my family again. The key opens a safety deposit box at First National Bank. Box 1247. Inside you'll find documents that will change everything you think you know about the last year. About why I really chose you. About what I really felt. I know I have no right to ask anything more of you, but I need you to know the truth. All of it. You deserved that much from the beginning, and I was too much of a coward to give it to you when it mattered. The foundation Theodore mentioned, that was your idea from our first interview. You said technology should serve humanity. You were right about everything. I'm sorry, Rose, for all of it. But I'm not sorry I loved you. Damian, P.S. The roses in your mother's hospital room? I've been sending those every week since your arrest. She thinks they're from a grateful patient. But they're from a man who couldn't find the courage to sign his name while he was alive. Rose stared at the letter until the words blurred. Then she looked at the key, small and silver in her palm, holding secrets that might change everything or nothing at all. As the sun set behind the Manhattan skyline, painting the cemetery in shades of gold and shadow, Rose Martinez made a choice that would define the rest of her life. She stood up, put the key in her pocket, and walked toward her future. Carrying the weight of love and loss and the possibility of understanding, some stories don't end with closure. They end with the courage to keep living despite the questions that will never be answered. But sometimes that's enough. The end.